Tonight I have in the studio with me Abu Ramadan, leading member of AFAC, to my immediate left. And then I have lawyer Chris Akume, is a member of the NDC's legal team. I also have to my extreme right Nana Asante Bedieto, who is also a lawyer, and we'll be discussing these issues. Gentlemen, welcome to PM Express. Nana Asante Bedieto is lawyer.
Is that what you want to say?
Are you ashamed of your party?
You see, this is not fair.
Welcome,
Chris,
gentlemen.
If you want me to leave, tell me, I'll leave.
Why?
But no,
Welcome,
but I will
gentlemen.
not accept that. I won't.
I beg your pardon, let's just
I
settle
honestly
down.
will not accept that, Chris.
and,
I'm not a member of the MPP, and I don't think there's anything wrong with being a member of an MPP.
It's okay. I'm
but
sorry if you're not a member.
let's put things in perspective.
Nana Asante Bedieto is
I don't think that's being fair.
If I'm not,
Chris
I'm sorry.
Akume is a lawyer, and it's fine if you don't want to be referred to as a member of the NDC legal team.
I don't have
That's
any
very
problem
fine.
with it.
Okay, so gentlemen, let's get on with the discussion. Thank you very much for your time. Let me start with you, lawyer Chris Akume. Was the president sick at all?
The president was sick at the time that he died. Other than that, he would not have died. I mean, the sickness occurred, and it resulted into death. So to ask whether the president was sick, I would say yes. If he was not sick, he would not have died. He was sick.
He was sick.
So
the sickness was instant, right? It just happened and he passed on. What I want to establish is that was the former president managing a medical condition which Ghanaians were not told of?
You see, the fact of the matter is that as I sit here, I mean, not until I tell you, you won't know which part of my body is not functioning. I may look very healthy, but I mean, certain parts of my body may not be functioning very well. You understand it? And not until I tell you that this is exactly what my predicament is, you will know, okay? So, the best person to disclose his health status or to know whether he's healthy or not is the president.
Is the man himself?
Yes, and he's a late president.
Time and time
again. And he has
again.
said it several times that he's okay. And we see him okay. I mean, even the morning of the unfortunate incident, he went, you know, trotting. Will a sick man who is very sick go on trotting? You know, it takes a lot of energy to run around.
Right. So yeah, I mean, I still want to engage that. I mean, the president, as far as he told us, was the late president. I beg your pardon. As far as he told us, was pretty strong. I mean, and well, it was demonstrated
and
by him.
You know, you
trotting
see him strong,
when,
just as I see him strong. Is that not it?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what happened? What changed?
Now we have been told, and I want to rely on, you know, the reports, especially as disclosed by his brother, that he died from a massive stroke. And from
is that a condition? I mean, massive stroke, is that a condition?
From what I know.
Is that a medical condition which could make you lose your life?
Well, I mean, the doctors will tell you that stroke, when it comes in a form that is massive, I mean, can lead to instant death.
Massive. I
Yes.
mean, I still, well, I mean, I heard.
I don't want to use the word gaga, but that's why I'm using the word massive.
I appreciate. I mean, but
Yeah.
I heard Dr. Cadman Mills, and
Yeah.
I heard what he said, and he described it as massive stroke. What exactly is massive stroke? I'm sure the party NDC might have discussed the aftermath of the president's funeral, comments coming in back and forth. What's your understanding of massive stroke?
My personal understanding of massive stroke, as the name suggests, is that, you know, a stroke which comes in a form which is not able to sustain him, and then he has to pass off. That is what it is. That's how I understand it. You know, massive. I mean, it comes in the form which cannot be sustained, and he has to die as a result of it.
Right. There are many people who have raised issues about the...
We have minor, you know, we have minor strokes. I've seen people who have suffered from minor strokes, where instantly you see them half paralyzed, they cannot move part of the body or some parts of the body.
Sometimes their facial...
And the face tilts to one side. And
without
gradually,
them knowing
as a result
that
of
it's
time,
happening.
it straightens up. And we have been told that is a mild...
And did the former president at any point in his life experience a mild stroke, you would say?
Not that I know of. Not that I know.
So that, I mean, if there was no mild stroke and then one day he wakes up and there was a massive stroke, that makes people wonder whether everything had been all right prior to that massive stroke.
Well, when you talk to the medical authorities, they will tell you that, you know, stroke can come at any time. You understand it? I mean, depending upon what is the cause of it. I mean, whether it is massive or it can be massive or mild, you know, and death can come instantly. Or if it is in the mild form, you can recover as a result of time. You understand it? Yeah, so he is not, to my knowledge, I mean, from my 61 years on this earth, you know, 61 good years, I've seen people kicking the bucket several times. Instantly, I mean, people you are with, all of a sudden, it happens to them. I will tell you a story. When I was in Internal Revenue Service in 1980, this thing happened in 1987. I was then serving at the Osu office of the IRS, now the Ghana Revenue. There was one colleague of mine, I've forgotten the name, or let me not mention the name. We went for a funeral at Kita. He was sitting opposite me together with others, you know, drinking, holding on to a bottle of Guinness. With his right, you know, his glass was in his right hand, sipping from it. We were all chatting. And all of a sudden, you can't believe it, he started moving on to the one side. Before we got hold of him, put him in a car, rush him to Kita Hospital.
He was dead.
He was gone. He was gone. As anybody who worked with Internal Revenue Service, also office, and then you confirm that this thing happened in Kita at the funeral.
Right. Let me come to Nana Santividiato. I'm trying to chart a course. Nana, welcome to PM
Thank you,
Express.
Stephen. Thank you.
What does the law say about the health of presidents and vice presidents in our country?
Well, thank you. I don't know what you mean about it. It's a very sort of vague question, but I'll attempt to answer. But before I do that, if you permit me just 1 minute. You see, the opening remark by my friend Chris Akome here, to the effect that when you introduced me as a legal practitioner, he wanted you to add a member of the MPP. It's not new. I've noticed that a lot of people who speak for the NDC or the government consistently want to refer to me as an MPP person. I want to say that my protestations is not because the MPP is not a fine party to belong to. Frankly, if I were to join a political party, I'd be more comfortable joining the MPP, certainly than the NDC. But I think it's wrong for him and his colleagues to consistently try to do that, because in this country, according to the NDC and the people who speak for the NDC, if anybody says anything which is not consistent with what they want to hear, they brand the person an opposition person. Just yesterday, the president of the Ghana Medical Association, I believe in his professional capacity, suggested that perhaps there should be an inquest into the former president's death. Kojo Chumbuafo, the chief executive of the Free Zones Board, called him to a radio station and called him an MPP man. Said that he was a card-carrying member of the MPP, and that is why he had asked for an inquest. I think this is so childish and puerile, and it ought not to form part of our public discourse. If people have ideas to share, opinions to share, they should be able to share them in their own right and not speak for anybody. I believe the NPP has enough people to speak for them adequately. And I do not think it is a denigration, even though Mr. Akume seems to think that is so. to suggest that somebody belongs to the MPP. I don't. I have family members who were the progenitors of the MPP, the UP, and I'm proud of those people. I have no difficulty at all with that. But if I am not a member of the MPP, why should I tout myself as a member of the MPP? I have other reasons why I cannot be a member of the MPP. And Chris Akume knows that as well. So I don't know what he's trying to prove here. We are here for a discussion. I have my own personal opinions to offer, as I do on public platforms, because I think it is important that all of us contribute our voices to the national debate on any issue. And I really don't want to hear this again from Chris Akume and his people.
Right, fair enough.
Now, to your question. To your question.
You don't think I have to
Perhaps
react?
I
No,
should
you will not react.
Perhaps
Because
I
if you
should-
react,
perhaps-
it will get, it will
No,
not,
I
it will not,
because
it will not
if
inure
I
to your
give
benefit.
you, if I give you,
It will not.
No,
Why do you think so?
I apologize.
It will not,
I think
because
that we
don't
do
talk
not.
when you don't know.
We don't,
react to that.
gentlemen.
Don't talk if you don't
Gentlemen,
know
I'm
your
afraid
reaction.
I may have to.
Definitely,
Yeah,
I mean,
don't
I may
talk
have
about
to
things you
mute
don't
your
know.
microphones
We'll
if
get on, we'll lock
we
horns
don't
if
bring
you think that
You
we
civility
cannot lock horns with me,
to
Chris,
the
please.
discussion.
Yes.
I have to introduce Professor Ajimambedu Akosa. He is a pathologist and former director of the Ghana Health Service. He joins us for this night's discussion. Before we went on the break, Nana Santi Bedieto, I asked the question, perhaps I should rephrase again. Are there any legal requirements on health that presidents and vice presidents of this country need to meet before assuming office and while they're in office?
No, the simple answer is no. I think apart from the general view that one must be of sound mind, there isn't. However, there are provisions in the Constitution which relate to when a president is unable to perform the functions of his office due to ill health. And then there are procedures that must be followed in order to have the president removed. Of course, if that would be involuntary. If the president himself is aware that he's unable to perform the functions of his office, he would obviously be seeking medical treatment, and the vice president would act in his stead. In the United States, there's a slightly different process in which the president would officially hand over to the vice president until he's well, and then when he says he's well, he resumes his duties as president. Under our Constitution, it is similar to the U.S. only in respect of in the U.S., you know, the second part of it is that if the president himself does not voluntarily do it, if a majority of the cabinet vote to have him put aside as a result of ill health until he can be forced in that way. In Ghana, it is Parliament that does that. If he, because of ill health, he's unable to perform the functions of his office, it requires a resolution by Parliament to look into the matter. It requires a medical board being set up, and the findings of the medical board being the basis of a removal motion in Parliament, and the president would be removed on grounds of ill health. But other than that, there are no pre-qualifications, and indeed, there are no requirements that one should either have a regular medical checkup or provide their medical report every year or anything of the sort. It is really left to the discretion of the president in disclosing whether they're well or unwell, or whether they need to hand over to the vice president or let him take up the load. And the only part in which third parties would come in is when there's a proper motion for removal on the basis of ill health. Yes.
Now, Professor Ajimambedu Akosa, I'll come to you. Earlier, before you joined us, we were discussing the cause of death of the late president, and we went by what his brother, Cadman Mills, said at the burial service, that his brother died of massive stroke. We need to establish what really, from your experience, is massive stroke. And when they say somebody died of massive stroke, what does it mean?
Well, a stroke is what we call a cerebrovascular accident. And what it means is that you either have a bleed into the brain, as a result of the blockage of any of the vessels, you have an area of brain cell death called an infarction. Those are, in simplistic terms, the two major causes of what we call stroke. And what it means is that it impairs body functions over a period. And by massive, it means that you have it and you do not survive.
So this massive stroke is really an acceptable medical term.
Well, we wouldn't say massive stroke. We would just say a cerebrovascular accident.
Cerebrovascular accident. Now, AFAC has been, the pressure group AFAC has been calling for some of these details, I mean, that you described, the details of what this massive stroke could mean and other things. Pressure group AFAC has been calling for disclosure, for public disclosure into the real cause or circumstances leading to the death of the president. Would you, from your experience, say that it is a fair demand?
You know, I come from, as a pathologist, the president's case occurred within 24 hours of admission to 37. It is one of the categories for a mandatory coroner's autopsy. My understanding is that that has been done. Now, with a coroner's autopsy, you answer one question. Was the cause of death natural or unnatural? If it is natural, in most jurisdictions, unless evidence is forthcoming to indicate that it was otherwise, then the coroner will end it there. There will be no need for an inquest. If, however, the cause of death is unnatural, then the coroner will institute an investigation that will be the coroner's inquest, after which somebody can take a civil action or a criminal action dependent on the outcome of the coroner's inquest. In this particular instance, my understanding is, and I'm saying this from what I've heard,
Information available to you.
I have not seen a cause of death certificate issue.
Or autopsy reports.
No, yes. Because you are ordered by the coroner and you're answerable only to the coroner. So I would imagine that the pathologist who did the autopsy will write a full report to the coroner. And I'm saying I'm not privy to that report, and therefore I am saying that what I've heard is that cause of death was natural. In which case, again, unless evidence is forthcoming to the contrary, in which case the coroner would have either said, if I need to do a second autopsy, I would need to do a second autopsy, or in this case, because body has been buried, he would then need to call for an investigation and therefore a coroner's inquest.
Right, so walk us through normally when somebody has a massive stroke, from the instant it occurs until the moment help comes around, maybe in the form of first aid or whatever medical emergency assistance is available on site. How long will it normally take a person to pass on or live?
Oh, I mean, this will vary. I mean, it can be instant. It can be instant. Because you see, the brain controls body functions. And if the bleed is considerable, death will be instant. Because it will shut pretty much everything down. So, I mean, massive, as far as I'm concerned, is not a word that we would use in the medical system. All we would say is that the person has had, you know, a cerebrovascular accident, all right? Or you can say that the person has had, you can say a massive cerebral hemorrhage, in which case, you know, the amount of blood that has gone into the person's brain is very substantial.
So give me time from, say, 20 minutes to 1 hour. How long within these ranges would a severe case of massive stroke?
It can straddle that 20 minutes to 1 hour.
Right, I'll come back to you, Prof. Now, let me come to you, Abu Ramadan. I realize that I've pushed you. Tell me, what does AFAC want?
Precisely
asking the right questions to get the right answers.
Which are the right questions?
The right
Which
questions,
are the right answers?
Just as Prof has just said, a massive stroke, when the bleeding is excessive, is in high volumes, the person can pass out immediately. And the big question is, did the president die before arrival? Or did he die whilst at the hospital? This is one of the questions we ask.
We need to know that?
There is the need for us to know that.
Why do we need to know that?
So that we can check our medical system around our presidents.
What aspect of the medical system do you think needs to be checked?
Yesterday I was on Joy, and I was saying that as much as we wouldn't want to pinpoint anybody and accuse the person for murder, but we believe that the handlers of the president, from day one, since 2004, have not told the people of this country the truth with regards to the health status of the president. Until now, even at the point of death, they are not telling the people of this country the truth. These same handlers have been transferred on, and they are handling the current president of the Republic of Ghana. The same handlers, those who handled President Mills whilst in opposition and whilst in government, are the same people handling the current president. Through their actions, could they have caused the death of the president? If it is so, what do we do as a people to put checks, the adequate checks around, so that we don't have a situation of this nature recurring? I believe this is basically a legitimate question. Now, with regards to speculations around, we have heard about, as of now, we have over 25 theories of how the president died.
What are your theories? What are AFAC's theories on
we listed
how the
18 of them.
died?
Out of the 25, we listed 18. Some people said the president was brought there in a what's it called? In a Ford. Some people say he was brought there in a pickup. Some people say he died at the castle before coming. Some people are even saying that before they left the castle, the president didn't get medical attention. Around him, there was nobody to take care of him. Even his ADC, his AD camp, who is supposed to be around him 24 hours, wasn't even there. These are some of the questions people are asking. And we want government to tell us the truth. Mr. Chris Akume tells us that the president, even the day he died, was jogging. But forgetting that one of his pastors, said the president was in Peduasi till even Sunday when he was supposed to even come to church. He couldn't come. He had to go to Peduasi and see him. Because of that, even that day, church service didn't happen. The president came back on Monday. That morning, how come we never heard of the jogging of the president for 3.5 years as president of the republic? Former President George Rawlings sometimes will go on his usual jogging in the morning. We hear of it. That, oh, he caused traffic, he caused a stir. We hear of it. But how come the president? We've never heard till now. And today we hear that a small boy went to the graveyard, and I don't know how they identified the boy, that he was the one they spoke to. So the media went there to interview the boy and ask him. And the boy is telling us that, oh, the president even said hi to him that morning before he died, when he was jogging in the morning. Aside that, Mr. Chris Akume also here. Yeah, and not even here, should I call them, communication team of government, tell us that the president wrote his obituary and signed before he died. When we are told that the man died suddenly.
I didn't hear Chris Akume say that
No,
today.
that's why I said, even if not Chris Akume, government communication team members.
I will not get annoyed with this kind of
but you have made
which is
no, but you have made
attributed to me, which I've not made.
No, but I'm saying
I will not get annoyed, but you can go on.
No, but I'm saying that you've made comments here that I've referred to. So if I say even, because it looks as if the continuous, there's one, you guys are singing from one hymn book. The government communication team members are singing from one hymn book. So if I add you, if you've not said even, you can pardon me for that. But what the truth of the matter is, we are being shown a letter or an obituary supposed to have been written by the president of the Republic of Ghana, signed by him. So the president opted to die when he knew that he was sick, and opted to die rather than to seek medical help. He was rather interested in writing an obituary for himself. That's what we are being told as a people.
Chris Akume. Yeah. Now, I need to ask you pointer questions before you react. Before you react, can I ask a question so that you react along? Okay. What does the NDC know about circumstances leading to the death of the late president? And do you think AFAC is fair demanding all these 18 points of issues they are raising?
It is, I think, very, very unfortunate that after the demise of our beloved president, such pettiness should set in Okay.
You describe people
Yes,
wanting
yes.
to know about the state of
I'm
health of a
coming.
late
I
president
think
as
such
petty.
pettiness should set in. I'm saying this because, one, I don't have any cause to doubt the integrity of the president's brother. I mean, especially his narrations as to, what happened on that day. In fact, he stated that he was there when this, what they call it, let me just, the speech at the burial site. So let me thank those who were with him all the time, especially my brother Sami, who also struggled with the doctors to revive him on that fateful day, when indeed he got the massive stroke. The doctors were with him all the time. They did the very best that they could do, and we have nothing but thanks to. This is the brother of the president who is saying that doctors were with him, and his brother was, the brother was even there with the doctors. I mean, out of, he even tried to do his best. So who am I to doubt, what the brother has said in relation to this unfortunate demise? For me to be asking questions. Look, we've heard a whole lot of stories. Ava Yabobeng Asamoah, who is an MPP man, said the president was taken to the hospital in a Ford Explorer. Then Michael Kwe Jr., who is a lawyer and also an MPP man, he said it was in an ambulance. Baladumen, who is a legislator, said he went in a pickup. He was taken in a pickup. That's also not true. You understand it? So when I say pettiness, excuse me,
these are not true.
So when I say pettiness, that
I heard them. No, Chris, let me correct you.
That he did not say that.
Baladomenu did not say so. Baladomenu was on Peace FM. I heard him myself. He said that. They've given it to you, Chris, but it's not correct. I heard him.
Baladomenu was Peace FM.
Please. What he said
was... And he made that statement that he was taken there in a pickup.
He didn't say so.
Was on
Let's tell the truth for once.
Please.
What he said was that.
Was on
may I, Stephen?
May we give Nana
When you allow him, why do you want to do that? When he was talking, did I interrupt?
May I give him to just bring in the issue to
when I feel that he
clarify.
can react to issue, wait,
that's fine. That's fine. Let him finish.
Michael Kwe Jr. was on Net 2, and he said he was taken there in a, in an ambulance. Then Yaboben said it was a Ford Explorer. You understand it? So when I said it's surprising that this kind of pettiness is setting in, I think I'm right from the angle of the presentation. Now, let me come to my learned professor. He actually stated that when a man dies in a hospital within 24 hours, when he was taken there, there must be an inquest into the coroner's autopsy. I mean, I know he's practiced several years in the hospital.
He didn't say that it was part of the law. That's not what he said.
Pardon me?
He did not say it was part of the law. We all heard him just now. He didn't say it was part of the law.
Did I say that? I said
Let's
he
hear
said
you
it.
say.
Please, thank you very much. I know very well that every activity is regulated by law. To the extent that, you see, when we are making a demand for any activity, I mean, it must be controlled or it must come from the point of legislation. There must be an act. There is a Coroner's Act, which has been passed by Parliament in 1960, Coroner's Act, 1960 Act 18. And it set out the conditions precedent for a coroner's report. It's very clear. If you go to section 5, the heading is when inquiry is to be held, okay? And then let me just read. When a coroner is informed that the dead body of any person has been found or that any person has died in his district and he has reasonable cause to suspect that that person has died a violent or other unnatural death or a death of which the causes are known or while detained in prison, lockup, lunatic asylum, or so in a place, he shall, subject to the provisions of this act, hold as soon as practicable an inquiry under this act touching the death. So the point I'm making is that I don't know which legislation people are quoting from that. When you go to a hospital and you die in the hospital within 24 hours, there must be a coroner's inquest or this. I don't know I don't know which legislation of the point from which people are. If it is a practice in the hospital.
So let's get it. Let's get it straight. It's your point that I mean these questions are not fair. That is not fair for AFAC to.
Because I've heard people saying that, look, the president died in the hospital within 24 hours after. So it is mandatory that the coroners, I want to challenge those who are saying that, to produce the law, you know, which requires or makes it mandatory that if this happens, this should be so.
So you wouldn't say that the health of the president should be.
We are coming to a lie which have been told by even lawyers, practitioners, medical doctors, and the rest. And I'm saying that. Look, I want to be satisfied, and Ghanaians and listeners must be satisfied that there's a law to that extent that when you go to the hospital and you die within 24 hours, there must be a coroner's inquest.
I'll take a reaction from Professor Akosa. Your reaction?
Well, you know, he read the conditions under which a mandatory coroner's autopsy, and B says death of which cause is unknown. And if you are brought in within 24 hours, cause of death is unknown. And that is why it becomes a mandatory coroner's autopsy.
If I may.
Yes.
Okay. Now, let me place this in some perspective.
No, I wish my learned professor will state that. I wish my learned professor will state that.
Chris, let's give Nana a chance.
First of all, let's put this whole thing in perspective, okay? I don't think we need legislation in this country to ask that an inquiry be had into the circumstances leading to the death of our president.
Of a sitting president.
1. 2, all these appeals to MPP this and MPP that. So what if the MPP asked for it? Wasn't the man our president? MPP people have no right to ask that their president's death.
Valid demand? That's the question.
Excuse me, let me finish. I'll tell you why.
Is it legal?
I'm building up.
Is it legal? I mean, we cannot rely on your fertile imagination to be doing things when it's not based on law.
3.
That's the point we're saying.
Now, you see, this business of does Abu Ramadan or Chris Akume love the president more than we do, and that stuff is besides the point. Everybody in this country was related to the president. Why? Because he was our president.
Don't dance around the side. Is there any legislation? Is there anything mandatory that when a man dies in hospital within 24 hours, there must be an autopsy? Address the issue.
I'm saying.
That is it.
Let me give you this. Let me give you this. Let me give you this example.
To that effect.
Has anybody said there's legislation to that effect?
That's what I'll be bandied around.
Oh, we are here. We're having a discussion here.
We're having a discussion.
We're having a discussion
here.
So let's say it's very loud and loud.
And even Prof has pointed out what he was saying.
What they were referring
to. Steve, you see, first of all, let me just do this correction as well. What Baladu Menu said on Peace FM was that there must be an inquiry because there are so many stories. Some say he was brought in a pickup. Some say he was brought in a Ford. Some say he wasn't brought in an ambulance. That is what Baladu Menu said.
And these are all speculations in the public space.
And because of the speculations, he was also adding his voice to what the GMA president said. He never said that the president was brought in a pickup. That's fallacious. Secondly, Michael Quay, I heard him myself. He never said the president was brought in an ambulance. What he said was that his mother's driver happened to be at the 37 hospital with his mother, who was a former military officer. And for 1 hour, a Ford Expedition was brought. And that was the vehicle that contained the body. And there were 2 people in the vehicle. The vehicle reversed and went to the mortuary, came back 2 times, finally reversed into the hospital. And that's when that is what he said, just to correct it. I don't know if that's true or not, but that is what he said. Now, my point is simply this. We have a situation on our hands in which the circumstances leading to the president's death, there's been so many public statements made by people which conflict each other. The first statement issued by the chief of staff, in terms of time, conflicts with the statement given by the president's own sister. And since some people think that the president's sister or the president's brother is an authority, I beg to differ. The fact that they are family members doesn't mean that when it comes to our president, their word should be taken over anybody else's, because they're not the ones who are supposed to handle the president.
Your president.
If the ADC told me, if the AD camp were to say that he was president and the president collapsed and suffered a stroke, I would believe him more than the president's brother. Why? Because it is his job to take care of the president. You understand what I'm saying? Yes, so this appeal to his brother has said. You know the other thing, the family head. We were told in this country that this was a private matter, that the family ought to decide whether they want an autopsy or not. Just last week. Just last week. Secondly, while at the same time, by the way, we were being told that the choice of where the president will be buried was a state matter because he belonged to the people of Ghana. When it comes to an autopsy, that one is his family. When it comes to where he should be buried, it's the state of Ghana. And I'm saying that these are all diversionary. The fact is that we live in a country in which, right now, a president has passed away. There is a report in the Daily Guide newspaper and the Statesman newspaper, which quotes an autopsy report suggesting that the president died because a cancerous tumor was rubbing against his carotid. Excuse me, please. When I finish, you can ask me.
Tell me the newspaper.
That I just mentioned it. Didn't you hear?
Newspaper?
I said the Daily Guide and the Statesman.
Daily
Yes,
Guide
yes.
and Statesman.
Yes. Now, and since those reports have come, nobody has come to
Daily
debunk
Guide
it.
and Statesman.
You know, in the US, and Prof will bear me out, in these circumstances, because the president is looked after by the Navy hospital, the military hospital, the military doctors who have clearance, the same as our military doctors here, would even be the ones speaking about this. They will be the ones informing the public that, you know, the president came, this was his condition, and this is what we did, and all of that. Do you understand? Now, somebody, I'm saying that the chief of staff statement, this is where the problem begins, gave us certain times within which the president fell ill and was taken to the hospital. The president's sister suggested that she was with the president that morning. They sang hymns and she left. On her way to Kaswa, her brother called her that there was a problem. If you look at the time, it's very strange. Then the president himself, Mahama, also said that the president was taken to the hospital at 1:30. Another NDC government communications person, forgive me, I forget the name of the person, also said the president got to the hospital at 2 and died at 2:15. We have the chairman of the NDC in the Thursday night vigil at the State House saying that the president died in the morning. At the same time, the very next day in the brochure, the funeral brochure for the president, the time of death is stated as 2:15. The chairman of the party, Kwamdeje, I heard him myself.
You heard everybody.
In his statement. You can make fun of it, Chris. I don't think it's funny that our president has died and we're playing politics.
Right.
We're playing politics with it.
You heard everybody.
The point I'm making,
Nana
Steve,
to wrap up, and then
I'll
take your reaction.
The point I'm making is that with all of these conflicting statements, it is important that we understand what happened to our president, especially when the president himself came from the US. We all saw him jogging on the tarmac, suggesting that he was a strong person.
He said the doctors have cleared him.
We have a report of an autopsy's report, which suggests that he had throat cancer and that the tumors were rubbing on his carotid artery and that it burst and he may have choked on his own blood. Okay? It is consistent with blood coming from his nose and mouth and so on and so forth. And they were suggesting that perhaps, and Doc can speak to this, but that at the time it happened, there was nobody there to give him any assistance. And that is why he likely choked on his blood. Now, all of these are things that are in the public domain. It seems to me, let me finish. Can I finish?
I am not regulating this.
Please, can I finish?
But are we talking about the contradictions?
Yes, we are coming to the
Are we talking about
the
contradictions
in form?
Or we are talking about whether, you know, there's need for, you know,
why should I believe
why are you running away from the issue? I have established that there's no law, there's no regulations.
So you want to pin it down to legislation?
Let's finish with that.
Saying that we will not.
Give me that proof first.
I am saying
then
that
we move after
as the president of the
Republic, contradiction or rumors.
As the president
so you don't
of the
think
Republic,
we should know
the
about
rumor,
the cause of death?
What they are put in the public
Detailed.
domain, I am saying that it is not true. That once you go to the hospital,
these are the same people.
What is your reference point?
I am holding a
What's your
legal document in
reference
my hands
point
here.
of the truth?
What do they have?
What's
What
the
do they have to
reference point of the
contradict
truth?
I am holding a legal document.
Mr. Ramadan,
let me just wrap up. You see, it is important. Let me tell you something, Steve. President John F. Kennedy, on November 22nd, 1963, he was shot in Dallas, Texas. Everybody who had a television set in America saw the president being shot. It didn't stop the US government from instituting 2 different inquests to find out the circumstances leading to the shooting and who did the shooting. Why? If he was just some Joe Blow in Texas being shot, this would not have happened. It was because he was the president of the United States, for crying out loud. And we want to say that in this country, the circumstances under which the president died, the day he died, what happened? We ought not to know, because why? Some people think we shouldn't know.
Because Chris Akume says there's no legislation to demand that.
You see,
Mr.
it is
Ramadan.
interesting. It is interesting. I'm coming. It is interesting whenever we talk about an investigation or an inquest into the death of the president. The NDC get jittery. And all of a sudden now they are trying to hide behind the law. And Prof here has shown you or has referred to you from the same law you're quoting.
I'll come to you. We don't have much time. Let's just
don't mislead the public.
I'm coming.
Don't mislead the public.
Please. Don't do this, Chris. Don't do this. Don't do this.
Anything
But look,
in this
with the
law
issue, with the issue of
what I'm
contradiction.
saying. Prof
With
has
the issue
not
of
done that.
contradiction. Let me pin it down.
What is the basis for the demand you are
The
making?
sister of the president said around
Oh,
1:45,
God.
exactly when she got to Kaswa, she was called and told by her big brother Cadman Mills that the president is dead. And he's calling her to tell her because he doesn't want her to hear it on radio. So he's informing her before she hears it on radio. Now, on Facebook, NDC communicators who today are screaming on top of the roofs that why are we asking for an inquest? The first announcement of the death of the president. I'm coming. I'm going to answer you. The first announcement of the death of the president was put on Facebook by one of NDC's most loudest communicator, and that was at 1:32 p.m.
Who is this person?
At 1:32, I'm coming. I'll mention the names. The second one was at 1:42, and the second person was an appointee of the president at National Youth Council, National Youth Authority. Then the third one came at 2:02. Then now they tell us that the president died at 2:15, and we shouldn't ask a question.
Why
Prof,
don't you
as a
answer the
pathologist,
question? What is the
and as
basis
a-
of your
and as
demand
a
for an
former-
inquiry? Answer
and
that
as a
question.
former director,
What
as
is
a
the basis?
pathologist, I beg your pardon, as a pathologist and as a former director of the Ghana Health Service, do these things bother you? I mean, the rumors of whether there was sufficient medical emergency response to the president, whether he was transported in an ambulance or in a pickup or in a truck, or what time he died. Does it bother you? Does it make you think that perhaps we're missing out on proper legislation to regulate how we handle these things? We don't seem to have a presidential emergency
Well,
response.
let
do
me
we?
say that I make a distinction between the cause of death and the health system. I make a distinction. The president got to 37. The president dies. I am told an autopsy was done. I'm told the autopsy indicated that cause of death was natural. As far as I'm concerned, with respect to the cause of death, the matter ends there. Now, what happened in the castle? Who was there? Was there assistance in a cardiopulmonary resuscitation? Who spoke to 37? What was the state of preparedness? Mode of transportation? That is a health systems inquiry. And as far as I'm concerned, frankly, if you ask me, the Minister of Health can do that. It is important because we know that in this country, our emergency systems are not up to scratch. When Fabrice Muamba collapsed in White Hart Lane, I wrote an article that are there lessons to be learned? Because I know, and I have said it, that even when we were building an ambulance system, the essence of having an ambulance totally different or separate from the health system was because people felt that nurses misused ambulances. And I said, with respect, an ambulance is not an van, an urban with a red cross on it and with a stretcher in it. But an ambulance must have life-supporting machines and must be driven by a cardiopulmonary technician, and the assistant must be a cardiopulmonary technician. That, for me, is the definition of an ambulance.
Do we have such a thing in Ghana?
Well, these are the issues that we want discussed. Because at the end of the day, an ambulance must maintain life from point A to point B. And an ambulance must have a call system that speaks to the receiving hospital. These are things that are done in almost every decent hospital. I'm saying this is an opportunity for us to look at this system I also want to say that for me, the essence of all this is that if you want to be president, your medical records should be known. It is important that from now going forward, that these are things that are put in so that we know that, look, at point A, at the time of the election of, the president, this is his medical health status. And then from then onwards, we move. So that, again, even in determining who becomes the president's doctor, it is important that at that stage, people must have a say. Because the tendency is to get somebody that you're very comfortable with. Now, whether that person is the most suitable person to be the president's doctor is another issue. I don't say we're all doctors, but there are some who are adept at emergencies than others.
So, Prof, I will tease your mind a bit. Walk us through a typical emergency situation of a massive stroke at the castle and what steps and systems anybody present would have put in place. Of course, we've heard from Dr. Cadman Mills' statement that himself, his brother, and some doctors were there. What kind of resuscitation would they have administered? How would they have done it? And from that time till he was brought to the 37 military hospital, what would have taken place? I accept, and by the statement of the Vice President, that he got to the 37 military hospital thereafter he died. That's the fact we have been supplied as journalists. Walk us through, typically, what would have happened from that point on till he got to the 37, especially as a president?
Well, I would imagine that, the president collapses. If there's a doctor there, the first thing you would do is do a cardiopulmonary resuscitation. In other words, you feel and you make sure that you maintain a pulse.
And this must be done by a qualified
if there's no doctor immediately,
aider.
Somebody must know how to do it and must maintain life till at least the doctor
must be certified?
Yes. Not necessarily. Cardiopulmonary resuscitation, we think everybody should know. Everybody should know how to resuscitate. Now, once life is maintained, certainly there must be a doctor around. So the doctor comes, checks the pulse, probably takes blood pressure, and continues to maintain the life until you get to the ambulance. You are then strapped in the ambulance, and an ambulance must have defibrillating machines, and so that is why I say life-supporting machines. Once you are in there, your life is supported till you get to the receiving hospital. The receiving hospital must be prepared to receive you with the knowledge that this is what has happened, and this is what has occurred right from the time of collapse till the time they receive you. And if any medications have been given, they should be aware of all that. You see, if you take Fabrice Muamba, he collapsed on the field. There was a cardiologist in the stand who joined them. They did cardiopulmonary resuscitation. When they got into the tunnel, they gave him 5 cardio shocks before they put him into the ambulance, strapped him. As soon as they got there, meanwhile on the journey, they were speaking to London Chest Hospital. So London Chest Hospital knew that this gentleman was coming. They knew his age. They knew what had happened. They knew he had had 5 shocks. They knew all the medications that he had received till the time they received him. As soon as they received him, they gave him 2 extra shocks before they took him in. That is a system that we hope that out of this, we must have this in this country. The day that I collapse, I hope that a system like this will be there to make sure, to make
whether
sure...
you're president or not.
Absolutely. Yes. To make sure that by the time we get to whichever receiving hospital, the team is waiting.
Chris Akume, you agree?
Yes, at least
you agree. We've gone over our time. So
our learned professor was here, and he stated that from the information that he has gathered from the report, on the president when he died, it was a natural death. If it is a natural death like he stated, then there's no need for a coroner's report, because the coroner's report comes in handy only when the death is unnatural.
So, Mr. Akume, okay. let me just get it straight.
I mean, let me make that point, because people are listening.
So,
so that, this kind of perception, the wrong perception which have been put in the public domain should went away. So, once it is a natural death, there's no need for, what do you call it?
Public disclosure. We don't
so
need to know.
So the demand by AFAC is unnecessary, mischievous, mischievous and unnecessary. Very, very petty to that.
I'm afraid we have to draw down the curtains.
What's it called? In Palestine.
Prof is saying that it's a natural death.
After so many years.
So why do you call for
a reinvestigation into his death now?
Somebody talk
that he was poisoned.
I have not finished. I have not finished. You are three. You have not finished. Let me finish.
How do you say we are three?
And apart from that, let me tell you something. Apart from that, you see, I welcome Prof's suggestion that to the extent that we should know what happened from Castle to the hospital, I think that is okay. But I want to make the point that there is an ambulance, 2 ambulances at the castle at all times.
But 37 didn't know he was coming.
If you observe the president's convoy, you always see that in the present convoy there is always an ambulance. So the issue of the absence of an ambulance is not there.
Let's just
your demand is unnecessary.
Right, gentlemen. I need us to wrap up. I need us to wrap up quickly, and we just have to wrap up. Ms. Akume, do you think, yes or no, do you think that Ghanaians need to know more detail about the circumstances leading to the death of the late President John Evans Atta Mills? Yes or no?
This demand or this request, whether it is genuine or not, is the issue. But then I will not go there. I mean, what I'm saying that, you know, the people have wished him dead on 2 occasions. Were they asking for coroner's report
what has that got to
South Africa? But let's go on.
What has that got to do with wanting to know about the
people should know there's nothing wrong in people knowing what happened to the president. To the extent that what happened to him was unnatural. We should know.
It was unnatural.
Once
it was unnatural.
The doctor here, professor here has said that it is natural.
You see what he said? The professor said he's been informed. That's what the professor said. He didn't say he knows.
Chris Akume.
He said he has been told.
He said he has been told. Let me ask you a final question.
Yeah.
Really, we are behind time. Totally behind time.
Yeah.
But let me ask you.
Just to deceive the whole country.
The autopsy report or coroner's report of
reveal that he died from massive stroke.
Will it ever be made public?
He has seen it.
Would it ever be made public?
I think that is the prerogative of the family.
Okay. Who said so?
You've not seen
Who said
sitting president?
The coroner's report does not belong to the family.
I mean, there must be some
I'm afraid, gentlemen.
I want to wrap up briefly. You see, to summarize the demand of AFAC, we are worried with the inconsistencies with stories leading to the death of the president. But let us not forget that there was an autopsy report in the death of Yasser Arafat. Several years down the line, a reinvestigation into his death has found out that he was poisoned. And as of now, the Palestinian government have given go-ahead for his body to be exhumed.
I'll take your last comment, Professor Kosa. Your last comment.
So we need to, there's a need.
I think I've stated my case, that the circumstances of the president's death warranted an autopsy. An autopsy has been done as far as I know.
Is it a legitimate demand to make it public?
As far as I'm concerned, you see, the coroner orders, and you are answerable only to the coroner as a pathologist.
It is so it is a legitimate demand to make it public.
No. You are answerable only to the coroner.
In this instance, was there a coroner?
And not to AFAC.
No, listen to Prof.
Oh, there must have been. There must have been, because...
Okay, so they should tell us so we petition the coroner. What? Yes, they should tell us so we petition the coroner. Because this is
your final words.
My final word is that I think we can spin this matter as much as we like. Those of us out there, Ghanaians, we're not, excuse me to say, deaf and dumb. And I think that the whole business of the President Mills's health was badly handled. It was a breach of trust, in my view, with Ghanaian people. Mm-hmm. There was consistent deceit in that. Unfortunately, and with due respect to the late professor, he was a part of that deceit. And we are still being deceived, even in death. So we don't even know what happened, how it happened, and all of that. I agree with Professor Akosa when he says that we must separate what actually led to his death in terms of the medical cause from these other circumstances. But they are no less important in determining how we handle our presidents going forward. I think the AFAC demand is legitimate. I think people in the streets, I'm sure you yourself, if you walk in the streets, in the markets, you're talking to people, everybody is talking about this matter. And yet, the government believes that we should not know. Fair enough. I think that it is a mistake. I think that probity, accountability, and transparency requires that we know exactly what happened to our leader, and not this sort of deceit and lack of trust.
Ms. Akume, your final words.
Yes, I will read a line from
final
the,
words,
you know,
Final words.
and that will be my final word. I agree that the medical examination, medical examination of those seeking high elected office should be conducted by a certified health facility of high repute, and should also include a test for banned substances because they also contribute to health challenges.
Your final words.
What was the response of the president, the then president, when he was asked about his health status at the castle?
Banned substances.
What was his response to the people of this country?
You know, those who,
so this
who want to seek the higher office have to go there. They are fit.
Thank you very much, Professor Ajiman-Bedu Akosanana, Asante Bedieto, Chris Akume, and Abu Ramadan. My name is Stephen Enti, and this has been one steaming PM Express. And thanks for joining us. And join us again tomorrow for another engaging edition of PM Express. Good night.